We're going to play a clip from SKOR North Live with Matthew Collar here.
All right.
That Jonathan has tracked down. And you guys had a scoop session with Doogie today, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, Judd, are you ready for this down in Fort Myers?
Most definitely.
This is Doogie. The Vikings have to free up some cap room. And this is Doogie speculating on a couple very prominent Vikings players and their contract situations. But clip's about a minute and a half long.
I don't know what the future holds for Kyle Rudolph. I can just tell you, this is beyond reckless speculation, right? Mackey and Judd love reckless speculation. This isn't fact. It's somewhere in between. But I can just tell you, Kyle Rudolph is not restructuring his contract. He's just not. Now, if he eventually does, that means he's had a change of heart. He does like it here. There's no doubt about that. But I'm just telling you, he doesn't have an interest in restructuring. Now, there's no dead money there. So if the Vikings want, they can outright release Kyle Rudolph. But if you do that, who is his replacement? So I'm just telling you, there's some moving parts there. I actually think, and I ran this by an agent I know really well, he's convinced that Kyle better take a pay reduction because if he hits the open market, he's not getting what he thinks he'll get. That he's better off taking the pay cut here, restructuring, staying with the Vikings.
Usually now, the Vikings take care of people on those too.
They do.
They get more cash or just as much.
Correct. Now, on the trade front, I think Everson Griffen's getting traded. I do. I think that's legitimate steam that is coming out of the combine from Indianapolis. I heard the Raiders are interested. There's some other teams interested. I think there's enough of a trade market there where they can save a lot of money. They have a logical replacement in Weatherly. The defense didn't fail miserably in all those games that Griffen missed last year. So I'm just saying, if I had to bet, if you said bet on one guy to get traded, I think it would be that guy. Now, I'll also tell you, though, from a prominent agent who met with the Vikings over the weekend, this agent is led to believe that the Vikings are open-minded to trading a lot of guys. Now, who are they married to? They're married to Harrison Smith. He's not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Thielen.
Right.
Danielle Hunter.
Of course.
Stephon Diggs to some degree. And Kirk Cousins because of the contract. We can get to Cousins, by the way, in a sec if you want, because I actually get the sense that if they could make a change there would be some interest.
Oh, that's that right there. He couldn't resist. That truly.
Oh my gosh. Hold on a second. I am picking myself up off the press box floor here in Fort Myers. How much information could come from one person in a short period of time?
That was amazing. So we just got, if they could trade Kirk, I love Doogie. And you can find Doogie now twice a week, Doogie's Scoop podcast on SKORNorth.com and live on SKOR North. Well, live from earlier in the day, but you can hear it on SKOR North at 6 o'clock on Fridays. So they would trade Kirk Cousins if they could. Point number one at the end. He thinks Everson Griffen for sure gets traded at some point here soon. And Kyle Rudolph will stare the Vikings down in a game of chicken if they ask to restructure.
And lose.
Potentially.
Yeah.
That's a lot right there.
I'm digesting right now, but hold on a second here. I got some thoughts.
What'd you eat?
I ate footballs, Rami. I ate nothing but footballs with Viking logos on them. The Rudolph one to me is... I think the Rudolph one is really interesting because my sense with him was he would be one of the last guys to play hardball with this team. So when they would come to him and be like, okay, Kyle, we gave you this really good contract and now we basically need some of the cap room back. I would have thought, oh yeah, of course he'll do it. So I'm surprised to hear he won't restructure. And I'm not sure that I would tempt these guys to cut him because I think that they might. The Griffen news does not surprise me one bit. And in fact, I think he'll be traded or let go because he's going to make too much. And we've talked about this before, you guys. But when he came back from the episode, he was not the same player. And as much as we like to say, oh man, the Vikings are a family, right? That roster's a family. Everyone cares. Okay, that's true until your production dips. So the Rudolph one surprises me. The Griffen one does not, and the Cousins one is just beyond juicy.
Yeah. All right, let's go down the list here. Kyle Rudolph is a good, not great pass catching tight end who's not great in the blocking game. He's not mobilely great, right? And he's 29 years old, going to be 30 years old middle of the season.
And if you're looking at his contract, his dead cap money, if you release him, is nothing.
Like right now.
Right now.
Yeah. So
according to Spotrac, if you release him right now, you take no hit.
And so if you're looking to if you're looking at things that you need to fix your team or to take the next step, and that left guard in free agency over here or whatever it is that you're looking for, is going to cost $10 million. You got to shave somewhere. What's my question about Rudolph is, what's the gap between Rudolph getting his 82 targets last year and catching 64 passes? He's reliable inside of 10 or 15 yards and in the red zone. But is he irreplaceable? I don't think I would call him irreplaceable.
I don't think he is. Not at this stage of his career. I think there are guys out there. There are guys out there who you could probably get a pretty good value on in the free agent market who could do for you what he did this year.
To Phil's point, I think when you look at their production, we've always sort of grouped him, right, with, oh man, he can do this and that. And the reality is, when you watch him play, he's not a bad player, but he's certainly not a Pro Bowl player. And I think if we were ever going to find out that Kyle had taken that next step, and oh my gosh, he's fantastic, it would have been with a new offense that DeFilippo brought in last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he came from a system in Philadelphia that has an unbelievable tight end who catches the ball consistently. That didn't happen. I feel like if Kyle goes in and stares them down, they're going to say, thank you very much for your time and service, and you're gone.
Yeah.
I really do. Because he's the type of guy, and again, I think he's a really good person, and he does a lot locally, and he does a lot for charities, and but he's a guy who I think in the eyes of Vikings fans has upped his value because of who he is as a person and off the field. But when you strip it down, and let's just say he was a bad guy and just a football player, I think he's okay. But I don't think that he's the type of guy who can go in and try and call a team's bluff.
So this is the tough part for him. So he's right now the 9th highest paid in terms of average salary. It's hard to quantify some of this because there's so many, but there's bonuses and there's different things that go into these salaries. But Kyle Rudolph is the 9th highest paid tight end in the NFL. And I don't know, like, if he hit the free agent market right now and said, pay me like a top 10 tight end,
wouldn't happen.
Right? It's like he would hit free agency and he would probably be more in that, like Jason Witten is going to make, it looks like $3.5 million with the Cowboys this year. Kyle Rudolph makes closer to $8 million with the Vikings, somewhere in that like $7.5 to $8 million range. So if the decision is between Vikings asking you to go from 7.5 down to 4 or 5 million to help free up some space, or you can stare them down and make them cut you and take your chances on the free agent market, are you really going to? But now some players might say, bleep it, I'll take less money because from an ego standpoint, I'd rather play for a different team than have to, walk in with my tail between my legs and take $2 million less. But I feel like the Vikings are pretty good about finessing these situations, these potentially awkward situations they've had before with Chad Greenway, with Brian Robinson, and they wind up coming out with everybody on the same page for the most part.
Last week on Purple Daily, with the help of a column from Courtney Cronin looking at how the Vikings can create some room under the salary cap, I think 4 of these moves the 3 of us are all on board with, and that's cut Mike Remmers. That saves you a little over $4.5 million. You got to stop me if you disagree with any of this. Okay. Cut Andrew Sendejo. That's $5.5 million saved. Move on from Everson Griffen. We just talked about that, and it seems like we're all willing to do that if it saves you $10 million. The one that would be harder to do and would probably piss off your head coach, and you'd be losing one of your better defensive players, is if you can find a trade for Xavier Rhodes at $13.4 million and then ask Kyle Rudolph to renegotiate, and if he won't, then you cut him loose. If they made those 5 moves, Manny and I did the math, they're saving somewhere between $36.5 and $41.5 million, creating that much money between the cap and where they are right now. If you do that, you could be a player again in free agency this offseason, and I think you can replace a lot of those guys either through cheaper free agents or through the draft, or a point that Judd has made a number of times on this show and on Purple Daily, just Mike Zimmer coaching guys up. I mean, if you trade Xavier Rhodes, Mike Zimmer has a track record of coaching guys up to be better cornerbacks than what they were when they got in this league. So I have confidence, I don't know about you guys, that somebody would step into that void and perform at or close to the same level. If you can free up that much space and plug those holes and add on top of that, you're looking at a pretty good football team next year.
I think I trade Waynes though instead, because he's due that the 5th-year option is pretty high for that position, and you're going to get to a point after this coming year where he's going to want to cash in, which I don't think he's going to do here. But the rest of that list, I like. I'm fine if they went through the other 4 pieces of that list. That's fine with me.
Yeah, and a lot of this, obviously, you've got a quarterback whose cap hit is $29 million, and your team salary cap, I think, is around like 180 something, $190 million.
It didn't go up as much as expected. I know that. It fell short of what they expected to go up to.
And so you're forced. This is what happens when you sign Kirk Cousins, because you're in win now mode. And you're not signing the third best quarterback in the NFL, but because of the way that the market operates, you have to pay him the third most money. And now, a year later, you're forced staring down the barrel of some of these decisions that we had talked about. Well, hey, you're going to sign Kirk Cousins, but that may mean that you lose Anthony Barr. That may mean that you have to trade away an Everson Griffen or a Xavier Rhodes a year or two before you're sure that they're cooked, right? And that's what's happening. I mean, right now, Xavier Rhodes is their third highest paid player. And he certainly, if you were ranking the way that all of the players performed last year, he took a step back. I don't think anyone would say that he gave you the third best performance on the team, right? No. Last year. So you're now with Xavier Rhodes, you're faced with one of two decisions. Do you keep him and hope that he can get back to the point that he was at to fulfill his value as the third highest paid player on your team? Or do you hedge, maybe trade him for 75 cents on the dollar or 50 cents on the dollar and free up some of that money so that you can add something that you're more sure of? It's a really tough decision right now for the Vikings.
I think the two, if Griffen and Kyle, to me, that's not tough though, right? I think those are easy. I really do. Because defensive end-wise, you're in really good shape.
And the Vikings, sorry to cut you off, the Vikings don't, if you're thinking, well, but Kyle Rudolph is so ingrained in the community and all those things that you mentioned, like the Vikings are assassins when it comes to this stuff. They do not care at all about, I mean, they care a little bit, but when it comes down to it, if it means, Rick Spielman saving a job and saying goodbye to someone who's good in the community, he will choose his job.
Speaking of operating like assassins, and this may be too big a discussion because I know we're up against a break, so maybe hang on to this until tomorrow. But another discussion that Manny and I had, I think this was 2 weeks ago on Purple Daily while Judd was out, and this was on the heels of Blake Barrett's saying on Purple Daily that it sounded like he was saying, read between the lines, that the two sides, Thielen and the Vikings, were close to some sort of extension. And when I saw that news, and I think everybody around here, when you saw that news, you thought, yeah, no brainer. You lock that guy up, right? And then I saw Louis Riddick talking about it the next day on NFL Live, and he said that they don't really need to re-sign or extend Adam Thielen's contract at this point. And listening to him talk, it kind of makes sense because this is a guy who's approaching age 30. He has 2 years left on his contract, so you hold all the leverage in the hand in those negotiations right now. And you're in the midst of this era of Vikings football right now where you've pushed all your chips to the center of the table on the Kirk Cousins era. Do I want to spend that money extending the contract of Adam Thielen and making sure he's fairly compensated and happy? Or do I want to spend that money over the next 2 years adding talent elsewhere on the roster to give us a better chance at winning that Super Bowl and cashing in on the almost $30 million a year that you just spent on your quarterback?
Yeah, because Judd, strategically, to what Ramie's saying, keeping Adam Thielen at whatever he's making, $4.5 million, instead of what the market value of his play might be more like $10 million on top of that, right?
Yep.
And so if you could find a way to keep him at that salary and also get him to report to training camp and be happy all season, you would choose that route.
That's going to be
I'm not
difficult.
sure that's going to be the case.
I think the difference here, though, is we're talking about a potential, if you extend him, and I don't know all of the logistics of this, but I think you can push the cap hits out so it's not going to immediately kill you in 2019. What you're trying to do here is look at guys who were like Thielen previously, who got contract extensions, and now those cap hits are coming due, and get rid of them. So I think you could keep Thielen happy by giving him an extension. You wouldn't take on this massive cap hit because of it for 2019, and then come 2022 or 23, you concern yourself with that then and go back to him and try and restructure and or cut him. But the most important thing here is with the way that this league works and the CBA works, guys leave themselves open because of non-guaranteed cash to consistently be cut, which is why if you don't restructure,